Hi guys, it is Miss Sailor. So today we're going to be talking about the first colonies, as in the first English colonies, specifically the Chesapeake Colonies. So while Spain is developing its colonies in North America, England is closely following along what they're doing. Henry VII in 1497 actually sends John Cabot, an Italian mariner, to investigate along the North American coast to determine what exactly is going on over there. So while in the 1500s, England is much more focused on its energy in Ireland, they are sending people over to look and see what is going on. It's when Queen Elizabeth I, which would have been Henry VII's granddaughter, comes to the throne, that she actually starts acknowledging that perhaps they should colonize parts of the Americas, if anything, to help eliminate Spain's efforts to eliminate Protestantism. So she hires people like privateers, sea captains, whom the home government has given permission to raid the enemy at will. In other words, paid pirates. She has them do the work for her. So Elizabeth's early attempt at colonization is in 1584 when Sir Walter Raleigh, he's a favorite of hers, he attempts to establish the colony of Roanoke. It's on an island off of present-day North Carolina. The colony was small. It only consisted of 117 people. They suffered very poor relationships with the local Native Americans, who were the Croatoans, and they struggled to survive in this new land. Their governor was John White. He returned to England in 1587 to secure more people and supplies, but events conspired to keep him away, so he was away for 3 years. When he returned in 1590, the entire colony had actually vanished, and the only trace that was left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a fence surrounding the village. So in the 1600s, when wealthy merchants and land elites began to pool their money, they formed these joint stock companies. In this arrangement, the purpose was so that specific investors could provide capital. They'd pull it together so that if the colony failed, no one person would suffer the entire loss. But if it succeeded, they could share in the profits gained. So the first joint stock company is the Virginia Company. It's named for Elizabeth, who was the Virgin Queen. They gain approval to land and settle a colony on the East Coast. And in 1606, it sent 144 men and boys to the New World. So in 1607, this group sailed up the Chesapeake Bay. They find a river. They call it the James in honor of their king, James I. They established a settlement. It's kind of ramshackle. It's not very well done, but they name it Jamestown, which is right here. So it's founded in 1607. It's the first permanent English colony in North America. The issue is that many of the Jamestown settlers, they're desperate men. They came from elite families, but they were the younger sons who would not inherit their father's estates. So the Jamestown adventurers believed they would find instant wealth in the New World and did not actually expect to perform work. This was a problem. So you add in poor health, lack of food, and fighting with the native peoples who took the lives of many of the original settlers, and you get the winter of 1609 to 1610, which is referred to as the starving time. It comes close to annihilating the entire colony. By 1610 in June, very few settlers remain alive. In fact, they are abandoning the area in which the colony was originally established. They also begin to cannibalize each other. But it is a last-minute decision of John Rolfe, a last-minute saving. There's a ship that comes in, a supply ship. It has John Rolfe on it. It helps prevail and prevent the failed colonization. The supply ship, it brings new settlers. But understand, of the 7,500 who come to Virginia between 1607 and 1624, only about 1,200 of them actually survive it. So, with John Rolfe, the thing with John Rolfe, why we have John Rolfe in the power slide here. Tensions run high. Remember, I was discussing they had issues with a local Native American tribe. They have tensions that run high with the Powhatan. Near constant war was happening all the time. The first Anglo-Powhatan War is from 1609 to 1614. It resulted because of the English colonists' intrusion into their land, but also their refusal to follow native protocol by giving gifts. So they are insulting them. So in 1613, the settlers actually captured Pocahontas. She is the daughter of the head chief, and they give her in marriage to John Rolfe. Their union and her choice to remain with the English actually helped quell the First War. She converts to Christianity. She changes her name to Rebecca, and they sail with her husband and her son. They go back to England. She is actually introduced to King James I. But peace does not last long after they leave. There is the Second Powhatan War in the 1620s that breaks out because of the expansion of the settlement. You also have the Third Anglo-Powhatan War, that is 1644 to 1646, which began with a surprise attack in which they kill around 500 English colonists. However, there is ultimate defeat in the conflict. It forces the Powhatan to acknowledge that King Charles I is their sovereign. But, on the topic of Virginia, Virginia is now an established colony, so political stability comes kind of slowly, but by 1619, the fledgling colony is operating under the leadership of a governor. They have a council, and then they have a House of Burgesses. So they have this economy stability that comes from this lucrative cultivation of tobacco that John Rolfe had introduced to them. They also have the beginning arrival of single women to these colonies. Remember, originally this was boys and men. In 1619, you also have African slaves that begin to arrive on the coast of Virginia. Growing tobacco is very labor intensive. So, because of that, colonists need a steady workforce to do the hard work of cleaning the land and caring for the plants. So, what starts as indentured servitude in a labor contract grows into which indentured servitude is where they are signing a contract, usually between 5 and 7 years, to agree to stay and grow tobacco in the Chesapeake Colonies. In return, the indentured servants received paid passage and food, clothing, and lodging. So, the promise of new land and provisions drives people to indentured servitude. But also, the Virginia Company implements the headright system, in which those who paid their own passage to Virginia received 50 acres plus an additional 50 for each servant or family member they bring with them. This also drives the growth of the colony. The transition between indentured servitude to slavery as the main labor source for the English colonies happens first in the West Indies. You have the small island of Barbados. It's taken over in 1655 by the English. That started in the 1620s, and it's in 1655 the English wrestled control of Jamaica from the Spanish, so now they have Sugar Islands. It's run on slave labor. So they begin expanding this slavery empire. It's slow to take hold in the Chesapeake Bay, but by the 17th century, both Virginia and Maryland had adopted chattel slavery, which legally defined Africans as property, not people. So here we have Maryland. Maryland was established in 1634 when King Charles I granted its charter to the Calvert family for their loyal service to England. It's actually George Calvert's son, the second Lord Baltimore, who conceives this as a refuge for Catholics. That's why it's Maryland, because it's named in honor of the Mother Mary of Jesus. And then you also have where it is a cash crop economy. In other words, they are built around just the growth of tobacco, like Virginia ended up being established as. So I'm going to stop here, and in the next one, we will discuss the other colonies that emerged during this time. The second area to be colonized by the English, which was New England.